Sunshine when it's gone. Ain't no sunshine anytime he goes away. Oh, and this house of spell goes away. I never see you looking so lonely as you did tonight.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen.
English. To this evening for Ekiti. I see a lot of distinguished Nigerians. Mr. Ado-ekiti has already recognized many of you. I don't want to spend the evening, which is already far gone, recognizing each and every one of you. Well, business stars. It's a galaxy of important people in the business sector. And the business we're here to perform tonight is really to sell Ekiti to those who may not have paid enough attention to what has been happening in Ekiti over the last 10-11 months. I'm going to be a year in office, October 16, 2011, so it's roughly a month from today. And in the course of the last 11 months, we've been trying very hard to put in place the mechanics of governance in terms of the legal framework, in terms of the policy parameters, and in terms of concrete actions in a number of sectors. Our vision for Ekiti, and I'm sure many of you know where Ekiti is located. I don't want to spend time in this exercise giving you a geographic description of where Ekiti is located. But the primary vision that this government has is an Ekiti where poverty becomes history. And for us, we feel that the best way to eradicate poverty is not by lip service, but by accountable governance, infrastructural development, wealth creation, and human-centered development. Of course, those are words. We have to back it up with a lot of action to be able to prove to you you are in the business where words are not enough. You're skeptical about politicians, particularly in the business world, and rightly so, because many politicians have come and gone. You have had the fortune, or many would say misfortune, of meeting all sorts of people in the business of politics. I don't consider myself a machine politician. I'm a politician by accident, let me put it that way. I grew up in the struggle for a better Nigeria, in the civil society movement, as an activist, but I'm also an academic. And in the course of my trajectory into politics, one of the things that really got me into politics was the fact that from activism I moved into public policy work. I worked with the government, particularly the Obasanjo administration, in a lot of policy areas. In my area of expertise, in security studies, in development work, I was involved with the government in the work around the Millennium Development Goals. I served on the Presidential Committee on that. I was involved with the government in work around security sector reform. I was also on the presidential committee on that, not as a politician in all of this effort, but as a detached expert who has been involved in these issues around and across Africa. But one of the things that I discovered was, as the president at the time used to tell us, advisors advise, the decision makers decide. So even if you have the best of ideas and the best of intentions, it's not often that they get translated into the concrete policies that affect the lives of ordinary people. And given my involvement at that level, I jumped at the opportunity when I was offered to come and run for political office, and to see how being in the driver's seat can really fundamentally change things. And that's what we've been trying to do in Ekiti. Next slide. I'm sure all of us here probably have an idea of how many people are there. It's 2.3 million people, but that's not really what is significant about the state, one of the smallest in the country. But it may interest you to know that with 2.3 or 2.4 million people, we are actually bigger than 13 countries in Africa and 37 countries around the world. So in a manner of speaking, we could be a country in Ekiti State, and that is something that we always consistently tell ourselves psychologically, that if we were to be an independent state, wouldn't we be saddled with all of the responsibilities of an independent state and expected to perform well in those areas? So the population comparatively in Nigeria may be small, but it is certainly not a small place by any stretch of imagination. 16 local governments in Ekiti. Next slide has that. I'll quickly run through is a land of honor, and there was somebody next to me who said, but isn't Ekiti the fountain of knowledge? Why is it the land of honor? We decided on this when we came in because we felt part of the rot that had taken place in Ekiti was largely due to the abandonment of our core values. Ekiti people are known for certain core values. We're strict and probably very, very hard on ourselves in terms of discipline, integrity, zero tolerance for laziness, quite diligent people, yes, absolutely in love with education, although education has not been functional in a lot of ways, but we cherish knowledge and we learn a lot. But we also know clearly that there is a lot of intelligent people around the world. There are a lot of people who are brilliant, but who have zero integrity. There are a lot of people who are brilliant who don't have any character. And we feel that it's time to begin to restore the values that people are associated with. Values of hard work, of commitment to excellence, of integrity, of honesty, of honor. These are by no means unique values to Ekiti people alone. There are many people who can lay claim to those values. But we are convinced that it is only when we have a full restoration of those values, particularly by those saddled with the responsibility of leadership and government, that it can begin to percolate down to ordinary citizens and work well in attracting people who want to do business in a relatively decent and clean environment where the business environment is predictable, where laws are just not going to be on the hoof and change haphazardly, where those who enter into agreement know the steps that would happen when there are difficulties in the agreement, either by way of arbitration or other forms of alternative dispute resolution. Ekiti is majorly an agri-driven state. Most of the resources are derived through the involvement of 75% of our people in farming, subsistence farming likely, while there used to be a few instances of commercial agriculture before now. And the good luck we have is that everything grows in Ekiti. Of course, the tubers, yam, cocoa, coffee, plantain, banana, kola nut, palm oil, you name it. Almost everything that grows in other parts of the country also do well in Ekiti. Rice, inclusive. Ekiti also has advantage in the area of mining and solid minerals, but we actually haven't exploited this much. Clay, kaolin, columbite, bauxite, granite. There are also other trading activities, both on a small, medium, and large scale. Of course, the nature of the administration is not different from others, so I won't bore you with that and the line ministries that we have. But I will talk a little bit about the state's development plan. You can go to the slide that has 8-point agenda. Okay, I think that's. I believe the material on each individual table also has something about the 8-point agenda of the state. I come from the Action Congress of Nigeria, as many in the room may know, and even in these days of non-ideological politics, we do have certain commitments that we meet to our people, and it's more of a social democratic commitment as far as we are concerned in the Action Congress, because we do not believe that everything public is bad, or that everything private is good. Yes, there is increasing interest in private sector involved to uplift those who are lowly and downtrodden, but that in doing that, there is certainly a role for the private sector in helping to transform the economy and development of our state. So in our 8-point agenda, governance is central. Transparent, accountable governance, democratic governance is the very first issue that we deal with in the 8-point agenda in Ekiti State. And the idea we have for that is mainly to increase the level of participation of our people in taking ownership of government and ensuring that whatever we do is actually derived from what the core issues that directly hit in Lagos, for example, yesterday. And they shared with me a lot of concerns they have about coming home, doing this, restoring confidence in government. And we do this around the state and outside the state. But much more importantly, we feel that it is important to also have technical expertise in government to strengthen the civil service, to be able to deliver a much better, faster, accountable governance in the state. And in doing this, we've taken our civil service through a lot of steps. Some quite unpopular. I decided when I came into office, for example, that we were not going to choose the head of service in the usual manner it's done. We were not going to choose you as head of service simply because you are sympathetic to the party in government or to the governor himself. We decided that we were going to ensure that the most senior permanent secretaries took an exam, and we invited one of the most prominent public service experts on the continent, Professor Ado-ekiti, to come and set the exams for the senior permanent secretaries at the time. And the person who led the exam became the permanent, the head of service. We did the same for the remaining permanent secretaries, and those who did not succeed in the exams were advised to leave the service, whilst those who succeeded stayed, and all the junior officers who succeeded got promoted. This is something that we've done across the board in the last 1 year. We've done it in the local government structures as well. We've just completed it with school principals in the state. So we feel that it's the only way to improve the quality of service that we get from those who work for the state. And initially there was resistance. Now it's been accepted largely by those who have been asked to take this exam, because they could see that it was transparent, it was open, and it was not set to witch hunt anybody, and those who excelled were either promoted or allowed to stay in service. Of course, the second critical item on the 8-point agenda is infrastructural development. This is of evidence why infrastructure development is important to all. Ekiti is a landlocked state, but it's also critically positioned midway between the Federal Capital Territory and the commercial capital, Lagos. It will take you about the same time to travel from Lagos to Ekiti that it will take you to travel from Ekiti to Abuja. For that reason, of course, will become the transit point for those heavy-duty buses and Dangote trucks leaving from Lagos to go to Obajana and Abuja, which has taken its own toll on the road networks. So we've been spending quite a lot of funds on improving the roads and making Ekiti roads much more accessible. Those who have been there recently would also have noticed improvements in the federal component of the roads in the state because of the pressure we've also been piling on the federal government on that. The same is true of the water situation in the state that has significantly improved. Ero Dam, the major dam that we have in the state that supplies 50% of the state, has just been refurbished, and the water situation has significantly improved. Electricity also has improved significantly with the commissioning of the 132-33 kVA substation and the supply of transformers that we've done since we got into office. One of the things that we're also doing on this is partnering with Samsung to put a wireless city in Ekiti, in Ado-ekiti, the capital itself. Culture is critical in the efforts we're making, and we have succeeded in at least attracting a number of investors already in this sector to help revive our farm settlements. Ekiti used to have a number of farm settlements in the days of the Old West in the past few years, and that is one of the things that we've been trying to revive. A number of our partners, I don't know if FM Foods, I don't know if Chris Okeke is here in the hall. It's been quite active lately, and a number of other private sector investors have shown interest in the agricultural sector. I mean, agric has two potentials for us in Ekiti. One is the opportunity to help take out of idleness the number of young people that we have who have literally left the farms, and there's no way they're going to return to farming if farming does not graduate to serious business. Agric has to be seen as serious business and treated as such, not just subsistence farming, which is what happens in a lot of our places. So we're keen on those who are interested in taking on the opportunities that exist in the agric sector, as I mentioned. Ekiti, of course, as many know, is a state of professors. That's what they call us. The quality of education has gone down, and we're trying to do a lot in reviving it now. We have a summit, an education stakeholder summit, that came up with a number of recommendations, including some of which we have started implementing. The consolidation of our 3 universities, Ekiti, in the most recent dispensation decided that it was going to have 3 universities for reasons that are not quite clear to many people. But clearly, it's a bit strange for Ekiti to have 3 universities when Lagos does not even have one, or Bayelsa, or Delta, or Rivers, where the resources to really cope with this at least is relatively larger than what we have in Ekiti. So we decided that instead of having universities that are really glorified secondary schools, if we're serious about university education, we might as well concentrate our energy on one university that we can fund very well and that can add value to the various challenges encountered in the state. This was what led to the consolidation of the 3 universities and the creation of Ekiti State University, EXU now. We've also had to do a similar thing for secondary schools. We noticed that the artificial separation of junior secondary schools and senior secondary schools have just arrested progress in the educational field, because in many of these schools we have 3-4 principals quarreling with one another over the direction of education and progress, and we felt that we could no longer go on with that, and we merged the senior and the junior secondary schools in the state. Primary school, of course, is really one of the world interesting problems that we have with Nigerians. Federalism is that primary school is not in the hands of the state per se. It is funded by federal government and run by local governments under the Universal Basic Education Scheme. And this has its own advantages, but likely we feel that this is one of the things that really needs to return to the state for it to be effectively monitored and produce results. Healthcare is also on our 8-point agenda. For us, we have our population, so we provide free medical services for children under 5, for the physically challenged, for pregnant women, and for senior citizens. And primary health centers in virtually all our localities, and the lifespan in the Southwest of 52 years. We also have, as part of this, a social security benefit scheme for the elderly. Not a lot of money, just 5,000 naira for anyone who is above 65 and who is not earning a pension currently. Industrial development. This is an area where we have not done very well. Business sector. Jumpstarting the industrial development in Ekiti is something that is a major priority to us, particularly in the area of agriculture. So if we are able to do a lot in agriculture and the solid minerals setting, we would be making a lot of difference in industrial development. Currently, I am not sure that we can boast of more than 2 companies that recruit maybe something in the region of about 200 people. We have Gussie Water, which many people in Lagos know, and then we have the agroforestry sawmilling industry that is a big employer in the sector. But our special focus here is on the agro-allied and the solid minerals sector. Tourism is relatively key in Ekiti. We are keen to redevelop Ikogosi, and that is ongoing. We've nearly finished the first phase of that redevelopment, and we are at the stage of even putting expressions of interest out for potential facility managers, interested entrepreneurs who want to be involved in the development of tourism in our state. Women empowerment and gender equality. In all of these areas, we've put in place critical laws that are important in the state. Laws such as our public-private partnership law, our Freedom of Information Act, Ekiti State Fiscal Responsibility Act, and the Public Procurement Act, and some of the laws that help to undergird the predictability that we expect when you get involved in the sector. When you review our state economy, the public sector remains the largest employer of labor in the Ekiti state. If you go to the next slide, it's our main employer, and it employs about 25,000 Ekiti people. We also have a history of direct public involvement in establishing and operating a number of other businesses. We have the dairy factory in Ikon. We've been involved in the past in setting up poultries. You know about the controversial poultry business that Ekiti was involved in a few years ago. We've been involved in Ikogosi that I mentioned, the road materials company, Romaco, the bond companies. All of these companies are virtually moribund now. Just a few private firms employ over 50 people. The formal private sector currently concentrates in the hospitality and the sawmill sector, as I mentioned earlier. Manufacturing is likely absent from the formal sector. We have a proliferation of micro and small informal businesses, particularly in the rural sector and in the agri sector. The resource base for development is actually quite huge. For arable crop cultivation, we have available up to about 120,000 hectares cassava 87,000 hectares, maize 159,000, total of about 700,000 hectares available for those interested in agriculture, and tree crops including 32,681 metric tons of cocoa and 8,500 metric tons of palm kernel. 10 forest reserves. It's one of the largest producers of forestry in the country. The timber industry is quite well developed and big. We also, of course, as you may know, have high quality granite, marble. Ekiti actually means a place of rocks, and anybody who has been to Ekiti will know that it's littered with rocks all over the place, but it's never been seriously exploited. Kaolin deposits, solid minerals. What then is our comparative advantage that we think would benefit any smart investors to want to get involved in Ekiti? Well, clearly because it's in its early stages of economic development, you can be sure of high return on infrastructure development, roads, electricity, and this would obviously push the economic activity actively. As an agri-based economy with a diversified agro-processing capability in its infancy, there is a lot of potential in that sector and many unexploited opportunities in value addition, particularly through processing, packaging, marketing. There is widespread activity in the timber extraction and primary processing sector. So there is high potential returns for timber sector coordination and upgrade combined with conservation and renewal of significant forest resources in the state. Unique tourism opportunities are there, both in the Kogosi Warm Springs sector that I mentioned earlier and the nearby Ekole Iloro waterfalls. You have clear opportunities that are unexplored and unexploited in the non-timber forest products and in the solid mineral setting. Clearly, there's goodwill for this administration, both from our people and from the development sectors, which will help mobilize the new development initiatives and also inward investment. We are pretty well educated. It's a literate population, so it won't be difficult for you to find people to work in any area that you want to be involved. In our view, and based on the research we've done, the areas that really rank tops in the business sector are tourism and hospitality services. Anyone interested in that sector would certainly, all things being equal, make a high rate of returns. Cassava production and processing, ICT is a good area. I talked about Samsung partnership with us earlier. Oil palm production and processing, cocoa production and processing, rice production and processing, carpentry and manufacture of finished timber products, education and training services, and health services. The proposals that we have for the new sectors, particularly agricultural inputs, marketing, standard storage facility, that will produce a lot of these things, and storage has always been a problem, so they waste away on the farms. Transportation development, particularly marketing into the city centers. Lagos, for example, many of the investors that have come to me, I always give an analogy to them that On a rough back of paper calculation, the Lagos food market alone is worth about 3 billion naira a day. And that's at a very conservative estimate of $1 a day. I know that most private sector players probably do 20,000 a day, but if you do 150 naira a day for a population of 15 million, you know what that is. That's 3 billion in a day. 3 billion, 90 billion in a month. If Ekiti were to just take 10% of that market and support our farmers with extension services, with marketing and transportation, I think you will bring in significant returns for those who want to go into those sectors: tomatoes, rice, watermelon, banana, coffee. So primary production is an area that we feel significant advantage could be derived from. Forestry and afforestation also is clearly an advantage sector. And because Ekiti's agriculture is in clusters there, certain areas are very well known for certain things. There are areas, there are locations for rice production, for example, for cassava production, for oil palm and kernel, for produce, for cash crops like cocoa, for even sawmill upgrading, furniture market manufacture, hospitality industry development, as well as ICT, medium scale enterprises. We have a strategy for private sector development. What we believe is that we do need to help create environment for new formal sector investors, and also that the enterprise development initiative should really focus on a number of areas that I've been talking about: modernization of agriculture, agro-processing, the non-agricultural sectors like solid minerals and tourism that I mentioned earlier, and then medium-scale enterprises. The resource base, I talked about that earlier, I don't want to repeat it. The opportunities that are there, investment opportunities, I also mentioned some of that in passing. I don't think I should repeat that as well. The incentives, and these are critical, the incentives for investment in the state. It has gone through a lot in the past, particularly in the last 7.5 years. The situation in our state has been less than stable. But in the last 1 year, I think relative stability has returned politically, and we hope to keep it that way. It's not to say that we wish for a one-party state, but that the tone of politics ought to be set by those who are in charge of government, because they have the wherewithal and the state apparatus. It is the way the people in government utilize the state apparatus of security, of business, that will define the way stability comes to the state. And for us, we feel everybody has the right to say what they like. Freedom of expression cannot be seen under a democratic government. And that's largely the way we've operated in the last one year. So political stability is critical for business, and we believe that we are in a position to ensure that that continues over the long term in Ekiti. We also have abundant, well-educated human capital resources in the state, and many of which are still trainable. I mean, they are educated, but they may be low-level skills. We feel that it shouldn't be difficult to retrain people or redirect them in areas that is of interest to you. We have easy access to other factors of production, the market, the raw materials, the financial institution, the infrastructure facilities, and above all, security is also increasingly returning to the state. An expansion of what we have been talking about. But the other advantage that we have is that since we got into office, and this is an indication of also how the state is now seeing, partners have returned in full force to Ekiti. Those who left in droves in the last couple of years, the FID, UNIDO, World Bank, the European Union, all of them are back in the state and very, very eager from you as prospective investors to Ekiti State as a destination of choice for business, for tourism, for leisure, and for demonstrating your commitment to the land of honor. Thank you.
Business, tourism, leisure. You can do this in Ekiti.
Okay.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you have heard it from